move ahead with Ron Thomas. He is Managing Director of Strategy Focus Group, and he will be talking to us about COVID-19, accelerating to the turn, preparing for a future beyond the crisis. An amazing topic. Ron, I would request you to introduce yourself and please take it ahead. And in the end, we'll again have some few question answers with you. Over to you, Ron.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So, my topic today: accelerating through the turn, preparing for a future beyond the crisis. As you know, everything has been disrupted, and we're all kind of challenged to, navigate through this. So my topic is going to be around the disruptions in the workforce and how we're looking to prepare in what I call the reimagine stage. And this is a slide I tend to use, and it kind of takes us through from before current state to respond. When this started coming through and we were in lockdown in Dubai, I'm located in Dubai, and we were locked down for approximately a month, probably a little over a month. And now we're beginning to recover. Companies are coming back. A lot of companies are struggling with workforce models. How is that going to look? So reimagining the workplace, reimagining the future of work. A lot of companies in the Middle East were very restricted as it related to workforce policies, whether people were going to be allowed to work from home. And now they've been exposed to working from home. Managers are struggling, leaders are struggling because all of their contact is now through technology. And there's not that face-to-face interaction anymore. Skill sets are going to change as a result of that. So there's a lot of reimagining going on. If you follow, major news sites, and I'm talking Harvard Business Review, Korn Ferry, they're all kind of in COVID mode. So I say from our side, we have to be in COVID mode. I work with organizations across the globe. I was with a group from Singapore this morning, talking through a prior topic that was presented around people analytics. We did a 4-day session centered around that. And we kind of looked at COVID. So what are you capturing from this period? What kind of surveys were you running? What type one-on-ones were you running with your leaders to get some insight as to what's going on in their area of expertise, whether it's C-level, whether it's frontline workers? Because all of those data points will enable us to build a newer, probably a totally revamped model in thinking through reimagining the workplace. So here's kind of 8 categories that I've come up with. And this has been verified from reading across, various pieces of research that's coming through. All of our work now is based on technology. We had a situation this morning whereby everybody's speakers went out, and we spent some time trying to fix that. So if you're facilitating online, are you preparing for those disruptions that would come through? Are you having someone that's sitting there to guide you through the technological aspect while you just present, which is your area of expertise? Growing demand of skills, skill sets prior to COVID, skill sets beyond COVID. Technology is going to play a huge part in that. In a lot of the so-called essential worker category, but I tend to think of all workers as being essential. But what happened is that from a strategic workforce planning perspective, that whole model of trying to determine who that critical role is has changed. Kanal and I had this conversation a while back. When you look at essential workers, the frontline workers that kept our supermarkets open, if you look for them on an org chart, they would probably be at the bottom of the org chart. If you look at logistics, who were supplying the stock for these stores, that would totally alienate the strategic workforce planning process that we probably have gone through, because none of those categories would probably be listed you know, in that analysis and trying to create a strategic workforce plan to look out over the next year. Because strategic workforce planning, 2 to 5 years, really? 2 to 5 years? You see how much disruption 3 months have come about? Changing employee expectations. Now that we're working from home, we can continue to work from home and still be profitable once we get back on track. Work can still be done and completed, but you have managers that are in a fixed mindset feel that they have to have their people in front of them in order to keep an eye on them to make sure they're working. All of that's changing. Work from home or work from anywhere. So I've seen announcements coming out of the US. A lot of the technology companies, the DNA is different, but they're saying work from anywhere. They're saying work from home. They're saying no work from office till January 2021. All of these, along with all of the stress that's coming through from our business environment, has infiltrated our workforce. And it's going to demand, in a lot of cases, a new type of leader. So Kunal kind of talked through that, and one of the other presentations talked through and gave some kind of hints as to what is a new leader going to look like post-COVID. Empathy would probably be at the top of the list. A fixed mindset probably will not work. A fixed mindset of from a cultural perspective of an organization probably is not going to be successful. If you build an organization around purpose, there's a high probability that you will be able to transition into a new model. Business environment, if you think of the airline industry, if you think of the hospitality industry, total disruption, what is that going to look like? We've all probably heard of Airbnb's response. 25% of their workers were laid off. But if you were to search Airbnb layoffs, you will see the announcement. And they were dissecting that announcement as to how much empathy was put into telling people basically that you'd lost your job. And then you look on the flip side of that, if you were to search for Zoom layoffs, the number of companies that were totally tone deaf, that laid people off over a Zoom call. And it causes you, so when I was reading these, I'm thinking, where's the human resources department? Were they a part of this decision? Because how could you approach a massive disruption and you're going to do it over a Zoom call, a recorded Zoom call? So these are the kind of things we think about. Is our organization ready for this new reimagining phase? Because if we're still stuck in that old mindset, there's going to be some challenges. Crisis management, who handled it well? Airbnb did a perfect job of making that work. And the other key component of that, and I mentioned earlier, was around strategic workforce planning. The model of strategic workforce planning, number one, is understanding what business strategy is. Well, your strategy was disrupted. So how do we move from there? What is that going to look like? Now, from a human resources perspective, and this is my advice kind of moving forward, you're going to have to sit in those business meetings going forward, because you're going to have to understand the implications of all of these and the discussion that's going around it. Because the term I like to use for human resources is organizational architect. And I tend to use that sometimes when I'm on a flight and someone asks me what I do, I said, I'm an organizational architect. So right away, I see the heads turning. They're trying to figure out, what is an organizational architect? I said, well, you have a human resources department. That's the same role of the human resources. They build and align workforces around your strategic initiatives. So you can just imagine the look I get when I say that, because in a lot of fixed mindset type CEOs sitting in business class, they're saying, sure. And one even ventured as far to say, my human resource department could never even think in that context. So that's kind of what we're running up against. So I read a study the other day that talked about the 2008 crisis versus the 2020 crisis. The 2008-2009 financial crisis, the CFO played a huge role in driving organizations back to health. So if we think about whether our organization is fit to move into this new phase, human resources is going to take the role of the CFO and try and emulate that and drive all of these and weave it through the strategy in building and aligning a workforce. So I want to take a look here of what I call disruptive leadership. And it's kind of 5 key questions that a leader should be asking themselves. A friend of mine is CEO for a major hospital out of Dubai, and we had a discussion the other week. And we were talking through essential worker concept. We were talking through being on the front lines. And I'm asking him, what are you noticing from an organizational perspective? He said, I'm noticing leaders that are stepping up to the plate, that maybe their title doesn't designate leadership, but they were the ones that step up. I'm noticing leaders that had the title that are frozen, can't make decisions on the spur of the moment. And they're delaying decision-making and holding up processes. They're not rising to the occasion. So he says, I'm noticing leaders that are stepping up. One of the other things he talked about was, he said, every day since this started, I keep a journal. And every evening, I'm capturing thoughts. I'm capturing what's working. I'm capturing what's not working. What major insights that I see? What can I translate from here to the reimagining phase? He didn't use that, but I'm saying, what can I translate of all of this knowledge I'm capturing here to this new normal? And he says, every day I come in, I'm going through this process and I'm writing and writing. He says, I've got a binder this big. So I said, what are your plans on using that? He says, I'm going to look at leadership development. I'm going to look at the way that we're developing leaders. I'm going to look at the way we have selected leaders. Because as he said, I saw some leaders that did not step up to the plate. And they're waiting for decisions from me. And my hands are full in trying to do that. So just wanted to kind of go through a few of these. And I'm going to kind of take it back to the prior conversation. One of the prior presentations talked about analytics. So I'm thinking about, what are we gathering from this? And so I turned it around to say, if I were in a role, and I've been Chief Human Resource Officer twice. I was Vice President of Human Resources for Martha Stewart Living in New York City back during the early 2000s for like 9 years there. And I came to Saudi Arabia. I was recruited from Xerox Consulting to come to Saudi Arabia as Chief Human Resource and Administrative Officer. Yes, that's how long the title was. So I have some background from that leadership perspective. So I said, if I was on the front lines, I would have started from day one capturing information. I would have probably used the same model as the CEO from the healthcare, from the hospital did. I would have been capturing, I would have been surveying people, I would have been talking to people, because we knew this day was going to come where it's going to move into the reimagining phase. And what did I capture? So if I looked at each one of those and that initial slide I showed you, what information did I capture? So I use my analogy is the toll gate concept. If I go through a certain section, what did I capture from that section? What can I learn from that section? Because now I'm flipping into a new section. That's a lot of information. It could be 3 tiers, 4 tiers on an org chart. What did I capture from that? We're all locked down. We're going to have to learn a new skill of managing virtual teams. So maybe from a learning and development perspective, virtual leadership. How do you manage a virtual team that's scattered all over, could be scattered all over the globe if we adopt a different model of working? Lots of mental issues working from home. Some people have great environments to work from. Some are working from home, you're on calls, kids are running through, kids are screaming, people are putting themselves on mute, going back. That's a lot of stress. And then you're saying, time's up, Now everybody come back to the big playpen and we work together again. Well, my safety is important. What policies are we going to put in place? Are we going to bring everybody back? So when we looked at those 8 key drivers, there's a lot of underpinnings, dependencies on each one of these. Number 2, how are our leaders responding? This is what the CEO found. He said some of the nurses that were in a totally different field came over to the areas of concern or the areas around the virus, and they just hit the ground running and giving orders, driving things forward, moving things forward. He says, I identified each one. So again, here are the things that we're looking for. Do we really know who our leaders are? We know who the leaders now, I'm going to say from current state. So what do you extrapolate from current state to give you a model for future state leaders? Are our leaders the ones that we're going to need in the reimagining phase? In some cases, we may have to begin a development process. So development is going to play a huge issue going forward. The type leaders that's managing a stressful environment as opposed to KPI driven. I was on a call a couple of weeks ago from the Philippines, and someone was talking about, when in the Q&A came up, someone was saying, well, my manager's worrying about how do I make sure people are working, because I think they may be going out to watching movies or whatever it is and not really working. And my thought was, really? In this day and time, how were you managing KPIs before? Was it by email, or was it by someone walking into your office? Or were you in a mindset, as long as I can see you outside and you're here for 8 hours, you're working. But if I don't see you right away, I'm assuming. That's going to be a destructive mindset in this new reimagining phase. So when we think about the leaders we're going to need, we're going to have to filter that through to figure out, specifically if you were hard hit in, as I said, certain industries, whether it was hospitality, airlines, or whatever. And then if we think about what type of leaders are we going to hire, because some companies in certain fields are on a hiring spree moving forward. Would our interview profile change? Are we looking for a new type worker? Would our job descriptions need to change? Because maybe the competencies are going to be disrupted. Maybe the competencies were developed in a more calm time, whereas now everyone is trying to get their footing. So all of these things are going to come about, and it's going to require a lot of inward looking from 2 sides, from the organization side. What type of organization do we want to be moving forward? And what type people are we going to need in driving that forward? Because in order to get to reimagine, and no one knows what that is, but you're taking your clues from what's happening now, you're watching your industry, how they're transitioning, and that's all you have. And from those 2 parameters, from the organization model, from the leadership model, are going to have to be in sync in some way, shape, or form in order to make this work. And with that, I thank you for allowing me to talk for 15 minutes, 15 plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Ron.